Well, Merry Christmas. Hope that that's a greeting that you'll be issuing to a lot of people over the course of the next few days. But as I like to do at this time of the year, it's time for our annual Christmas survey. So the first area that I'm going to ask you to respond to has to do with your Christmas shopping. How many of you are completely done your Christmas shopping? Wow, that is intimidating. How many of us have a little bit more to do when it comes to our Christmas shopping? Okay. And how many of us would go, Pastor John, there's still days left. I'm waiting for that surge of the adrenaline deadline. Anybody in that category? Oh, there are a couple of people. That's good. I appreciate your honesty. I don't envy your scurrying around over the course of the next few days, but you need to know that I have actually done my Christmas shopping for myself. The way we do it, I'll give you a good example. I really like books. So the way it was years ago is I would say to Heather, go to Indigo. Here's kind of the range of books that I like. You select some books for me. And then as time has evolved, it has been, John, you point out the books that you would like. And now, over the last 2 or 3 years, it's been, John, you purchase the books, give them to me. So what happens Christmas Day is each book, I've got about 5 this year, are all wrapped beautifully and individually. And when I open the gift, I will go, wow, Heather, how did you know? Not sure the rest of the family is impressed or buying into that, but that's Christmas shopping. Well, let's talk about Christmas dinner. How many of you later this week will be having some turkey? Okay, that's a lot. How many of you are going, no, we're going to have something else? Oh, actually, there's a number of people who fall into that category. We were mentioning people to pray about. I got up the other day to visit Don Lazon. Many of us know Don, and many of us remember Don as the fellow who cooked our Christmas turkeys here when we'd have Christmas dinners. Don is not well. He has got stage 4 cancer. It's everywhere in his body, and they do not feel that chemo or radiation would be helpful. So Don and I talked very openly about his future. We talked about heaven, and he just asked for the congregation to pray that he would have a calmness and a peace as it comes to the next few weeks. But he is hoping that he makes it through to Christmas because he is looking forward to a special Christmas dinner. And I said to Don, Don, are they going to be serving turkey at Vic Hospital? And he said, oh, no. He said, they likely are, but he said, and his stepson Jack was there when I was visiting, and he said, Jack is going to be bringing in some Chinese food. He said, I can't wait to have some sweet and sour chicken balls and some vegetable fried rice and Shanghai noodles. Does that sound like a great Christmas dinner? So I hope you enjoy your Christmas dinner this week as well. Well, final area, it has to do with nativity scenes or nativity sets. How many of you, if I was to go into your home, you have at least 2 nativity sets or scenes? Oh, that's a lot of you. And I would even include ornaments. You might have an ornament. You might have something of that nature as well, maybe a calendar. How many of you have 5? Yeah. Heather, get your hand up. Did you know the other day, this was just 3 or 4 days ago, I got a letter, a Christmas newsletter from a friend of mine, and he indicated that his wife has over 40 nativity sets. Can you believe that? 40. She collects them, and she has them all kinds of nativity sets, and I just think that is incredible. Now, we do have a lot in our home. I think, Heather, we've got at least 10. I was counting them up the other day. We even have an original wood carving from Bethlehem that I got for Heather. So I am considerate of Heather. I got that to her when I had my trip to Israel. We have all kinds of other sets. We even have, someone here in the congregation gave us a nativity scene with cat figures. Figure that out. So there's a cat shepherd. There's a cat wise man. There is cat Joseph. There is cat Mary. It's kind of out there. The person who gave it to us, I'm going to keep the person anonymous. All I will say is, I'm glad it's cats and not ducks. Okay, that's an insider, and some of you will need to ask others what I'm meaning by that little insider. But one of the most recent nativity scenes we have got, Heather got this, and it is actually quite beautiful. Very classic and traditional, made in China. Of course, that is what we would expect. Now, I must admit, the figures are very beautifully done, but there's a real Caucasian feel to the figures. It's a Caucasian Joseph, a Caucasian Mary. Even the cattle and the sheep look Caucasian, to be honest with you. And then this isn't funny. I want to be respectful, but everybody for the stable size is quite big. Like Joseph looks like he could be a center in the NBA. He's that tall. But then it's baby Jesus. Baby Jesus looks like he's about 6 years old. You've heard the phrase, no room in the inn? Well, we discovered there was no room in the crib, no room in the manger for Jesus. So we've had to transfer that baby Jesus out for another baby Jesus that we had in another set to make it appropriate. Now, was there anybody this morning, when I asked that question, you went, I don't really have a nativity scene in my home? Is there anybody that is in that? Oh, there's a few. Wow. So, okay, I have actually... This is like a door prize. Alex, could you help me out here? You're a good man, Alex. So if this is beautiful. These are made in China, but they're for your tree. They're a little ornament with a nativity scene, and there's a lot in there, Alex. So even if you're going, hey, I'd like one anyways, put up your hand, and as I continue on, there you go. Alex, try to get rid of them, okay? They are taking up space in the church office. No, they're beautiful. They are beautiful. Very well constructed, and it'll be a highlight of your Christmas, I'm sure. So some of you are asking, okay, so what does all this have to do? Nice to have surveys, but what does all this have to do with where we're going today? Our series over the last few weeks, as I have said, is Guess Who is Coming to Christmas Dinner? And any preacher or pastor knows it's always a challenge at this time of year to be somewhat creative and original, and I sure have appreciated your feedback and encouragement as we've looked at Guess Who's Coming to Christmas Dinner. And today, our theme, as we go through Gospel of Luke, has to do with lost and found. Well, let me try to tie it together with some of the thoughts I've had recently. Bethlehem is a major setting in the Christmas story. What does Bethlehem mean, the name Bethlehem? Well, it means house of bread. When we think of where Mary placed baby Jesus, she placed him in a manger. That is a feeding trough for animals. And as I said a few weeks ago, the idea of food, eating, feasts, banquets is very prominent in the Gospel of Luke, more than any other place, not only in the Gospels, but I have discovered in the whole Bible. It's a major theme that we have there. But when it comes to this idea of Bethlehem and our passage this morning, if I picture Bethlehem, where Mary, Joseph, where baby Jesus was laid in a manger, I think there could be a banner over the stable, maybe even specifically over the manger. And the banner would read, "Lost and Found." You see, that's why Jesus came. In fact, Jesus, we're going to see this in 2026, in a very clear statement says, referring to himself, the Son of Man came to seek and save those who are lost. See, Jesus left the splendor of heaven on a rescue mission to seek and to save those who are lost, those who need to find the way. If I was to put a banner over our passage this morning, where we're going to extend it and look at a wonderful story, in Luke 15, a father says, "Let's have a feast and celebrate, for this son of mine who was lost is now found." The banner over that feast, if there was a banner hanging over the celebration, it would read, "Lost and Found." So today's morning, I hope, is going to be a message that will encourage us. We think of this theme of things that are lost. We could still have animals that are lost. If you see a telephone or an electric pole, it's not unusual to see a notice saying family pet is missing. You can still miss coins. So the two stories that Rick read for us are still relevant today. Maybe some of us have spent a day or two. Do you remember that stocking stuffer you purchased back in the summer and thought, what a great stocking stuffer, and then you decided to hide it? You hid it so well that you don't even know where it is, and you've been frantic over the last 2 or 3 days looking for that stocking stuffer. Or maybe it's a gift card. You know you got that gift card, but where did you put it? And you know that you're in the home run stretch. There's too many people who are shaking your heads, so I realize that I'm speaking to the choir in this one. Or what about lost keys? Well, that has actually nothing to do with the message, but boy, is it ever relevant in our household. Lost keys. And then maybe with the meal. You know you bought some cranberry sauce, right? But where did you put it? You looked in the pantry, it's not there, and what is a turkey meal without cranberry sauce? Or maybe it's that can of gravy. Oh, where did it go? Where did you put it? It's lost. Brussels sprouts, if you're missing Brussels sprouts, keep them missing. That's not a problem at all. Oh, there's other things that could be missing. You know, those cracker things we use or Christmas serviettes that you have. But on a serious note, some of us this Christmas will be missing. Maybe it's a family member. Some of you who have had loved ones who have died in 2025. They will not be sitting at the table this Christmas. Or maybe some of you have a family member who has to work on Christmas Day or Boxing Day, and that's difficult. But boy, do we appreciate those who are willing and able to work to look after us on even those special holidays. But tragically, there's also people who may be missed because of family conflict. There's estrangement within the family. I heard of somebody the other day who has not talked to her sister in 20 years. I don't think she will be at the Christmas dinner with her sister. And I know most of you, and I know some of you, can relate too well to that. So I hope today, I've given an extended introduction today on purpose, but I hope to encourage you, to give you some hope, maybe even a little challenge, as we look at Luke chapter 15, under the banner, Lost and Found. Simple outline, King, for you today. It's going to be setting the stage. Then we're going to look at stories about a lost sheep and a lost coin. That kind of, I call the opening act. So we set the stage, there's the opening act, and then there's the main story, known as the story of the prodigal son or sons. And we're going to be looking at a surprising situation or a reversal. Someone who is outside of the dinner, who we would expect would have been there, and somebody who is there who, surprise, we would have expected not to be there. So the passage is on the screen behind me. We're going to go at a lightning speed today, just to be sensitive to some of our timing issues. But as we set the stage, when it comes to any parable or these short stories in the Bible, there are three words that are critical with a parable. Here they are: context, context, and context. What prompts the telling of stories by Jesus? Well, we're told, back to verse 1, Paul, or Carolyn, sorry. Yeah, I think I misled you, Carolyn. This is now where we have a commercial break as we go back to verse 1. Yeah, here we go. So the tax collectors and sinners were all gathered around to hear Jesus. That is the setting. Now, the tax collectors and sinners. Tax collectors worked for the bad guys. That is the Roman Empire. The sinners, as we're going to discover later, were prostitutes. So they were bad women, and together the tax collectors and sinners were people with a bad reputation. But Jesus welcomed them. They're hearing Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, these are the so-called good guys, the holier-than-thou men. They muttered. It's a word I kind of resonate. They muttered. I say this out loud. They were a little too courteous for that, but under the breath they're muttering, "This man welcomes sinners, and what's worse, he eats with them." Jesus is breaking the rules. A holy person is not to associate with people like this. How did Jesus respond? Well, he could have rebuked these religious leaders right on the spot. He could have gone into a long lecture. But Jesus always loves to tell stories. These are parables. We have 3 of them in Luke 15, the 2 that I'm calling the opening act, and then kind of the main feature. It's a good example for those of us who are pastors or preachers. Jesus was indeed a master storyteller. So the passage that Rick read for us begins with a story of a lost sheep. This farmer has 100 sheep, so it's not a gigantic flock, but significant enough that he valued the one sheep that was lost. He left the 99 maybe with a hired hand, and he went and looked for that one sheep. And then when he found that sheep, he rejoiced and invited others to celebrate with him. The same is true of a woman with a lost coin. She had 10 coins, but she left the 9 aside, started to sweep through her house. She looked frantically until she found that lost coin, and again invited others to celebrate with her. So there's a thread in these 2 stories. Did you pick it up? It's very, very evident. First of all, something of value is lost. The second part of the thread is there is an all-out effort to find what is lost. And then finally, when something that is lost is found, there is rejoicing and celebrating. And then in verse 7, so back one, in verse 7, we see that these stories are providing a picture for us of what heaven is like. Jesus says, "I tell you, in the same way there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents." Someone who is lost turns direction and finds their way, than over 99 so-called righteous persons who don't think they need to repent. Verse 10, in the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. This is a beautiful picture for us of what God values and what God's deeming important. People like you and people like me. Now, you know what it's like, don't you? Even the prospect of a lost child makes us nervous. We were pretty fortunate. Our daughter, Melissa, was very compliant. I can't remember, except once, when it was my fault, where she got lost. Mark was another story. He had a tendency to wander off, and I remember saying to Heather, oh, how proud we can be before we have kids. I'd look at these parents who had a child on a leash, and I would go, never, ever, ever. So when we had a leash for Mark, he still was like Houdini. He could still get out of it. And I remember the time or the day where I said to Heather, I don't think this leash is effective anymore. Mark's now 15, and but I know what the motivation was, right? The motivation was we wanted to protect him, and we didn't want to lose him. I remember years ago we were at the Metro Zoo, and it was a very busy summer day, hot, and there was a little girl who came up to us, and we were with a couple of friends and their kids as well, and this little girl, tears streaming down her eyes, she was so distraught. She said, I'm lost. I don't know where my parents are. And those around me, and including me, there was nobody who said to the girl, oh, it sucks to be you. There was nobody who said, you know what? The gorillas are being fed in 10 minutes. I don't think we have time to attend to your situation. Could you imagine if somebody had said to the little girl, do you have any brothers or sisters? And if she said yes, we'd go, well, you know, your parents are going to really miss you. They've got other sons and daughters. No, you'd never say that. And I remember distinctly, I've got this image in my mind of her parents sprinting towards her. They had been frantic, and their sense of relief, and then their gladness and their celebration. Who cared if the gorillas were being fed in 10 minutes? We all joined with them and celebrated that special moment. Search and rescue efforts are all around us, and we appreciate those who do that as a job, who look for people. I have a book that I got last year that I have read is simply called The Darkest White. Now that's quite an interesting title, but it has to do with something that happened in Canada. On January 20th, 2003, a thunderous crack rang out and a violent tide of ice and snow barreled down Canada's Selkirk Mountains. That's up in BC, right? And it buried 13 skiers and snowboarders. Among them was the Michael Jordan of snowboarding. His name is Craig Kelly, a world champion who had dominated the sport before walking away from competition to rekindle his passion in the untamed wilds of North America. It's a fascinating book because they talk about how these skiers were enjoying a spectacular, beautiful day in the snow of northern BC. And within an hour, that title, The Darkest White, 13 skiers and snowboarders buried in deep, dark, white snow and ice, what got called debris. Fortunately, some of them were rescued, saved from asphyxiation. But there were some who died that day. What amazed me when I read the book was some who they dug out And some were literally buried like 7, 9 feet. Can you imagine that? But when they got them out, the person surviving, exhausted, had given everything. And yet, instead of going over and resting, they would join with other groups trying to dig out some of those buried under the snow. Search and rescue efforts aren't all around us. Did you know it was 50 years ago, right, that the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald, 50 years ago. There's a song about that, right, from a fella from my hometown, Gordon Lightfoot, the sinking of the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. So we appreciate these search and rescue efforts. And if you think of Jesus and you think of the Christmas story and all that's involved in the Nativity, think of Lost and Found, this great search. Well, here's where we're going to really speed through, and I hope you're familiar with the main story. This main story that often is called the parable of the prodigal son or the parable of the prodigal sons. I've even heard it called, Will the Real Prodigal Son Please Stand Up? Charles Dickens, great writer, eh? Great writer of Christmas stories. Charles Dickens called this story the greatest short story ever written. And it is a wonderful story. It involves 3 main characters, a father, an older son, and a younger son. Carolyn's going to help me. We're going to just walk through this quite rapidly. The younger son comes to the father with an unusual request. It's premature. It's inappropriate. It's as if he is acting as if his dad is dead. He asks for his share of the estate. He transfers that into money, and he goes to a distant land. Very intentional, the wording by Jesus. It's a distant land. In that distant land, this young guy lived recklessly and carelessly. We're told that he squandered his wealth in all kinds of wild and reckless living. He ends up broke. He ends up not only broke, but broke in a famine. He's got no job. He's got no money. He's starving. And the only job he can find is he gets hired on to feed pigs. I'm prepared to say this young fellow was Jewish. What an inappropriate job for a young Jewish fellow, a job of feeding pigs. But the pigs were eating better than he was. He even desired to have their pods, and that's not an appetizing kind of food. And yet this young guy found himself still very, very hungry. He's at rock bottom. He's in despair. And then the light bulb goes on. He thinks to himself, I have absolutely dishonored and disrespected my dad, but my dad's servants even have food enough to spare. And with sincerity, this young fella realizes that he has sinned against God and against his dad. He is experiencing what Luke earlier called repentance. He's been going in the wrong direction. He's been going away from his father. He now desires to return to him. Oh, he knows that he's not worthy, but he's going to take his chance. And then it's where the story gets so wonderfully encouraging. We're told that he was still far off, so he's making his way to his dad's estate, and the dad sees him. You've heard it said before, was the dad watching for him? Was he waiting for him? What we do know is that the moment the dad spots the younger son, he starts running towards him. Very, very uncommon in that culture and society for a dad to run, taking up his robe and tucking it into his waist area. What a picture. He embraces his son. And he kisses his son. The son is given a robe, a ring, sandals, all signs of sonship, of a precious relationship. Let's read verses 22 to 24. But the father said to his servants, Quick, bring the best robe, put it on him, put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. And here's the punchline. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they began to celebrate. Oh, it must have been a wonderful celebration. We're going to sing later today, come to the table. Come to that table of celebration where there's grace and mercy and forgiveness. I don't know if they sang any Christmas songs. I would venture to say they didn't. I could see a song maybe like Joy to the World, but could you imagine them singing Amazing Grace if it had been written? Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Don't you like a good story with a happy ending? I mean, that's how a good story should go, right? We have a happy, happy ending. The other night, we had a real treat in our home. We watched a Hallmark Christmas movie. Okay, I'm being sarcastic. I think they all have happy endings, don't they? In this case, though, it was a happy ending. It was an okay story. But this is not how the story ends. Do you remember there used to be a fellow on the radio, Paul Harvey? Remember his famous tagline? And now for the rest of the story. So we're told the older son is in the field, and he's been working hard. He hears the music and the dancing. I've had fun playing with that in my mind. How do you hear dancing? When I was in Israel a few years ago, there was a big banquet, and I got to tell you, our Jewish friends sure know how to celebrate. It was loud, it was boisterous, so I think you can actually hear the singing and the dancing. So the older son, as he's returning from the fields, asks, what's going on? And then a servant says, hey, I got great news. Your younger brother has come home, and he's not only come home, but he's safe and sound. And the older son, he rejoiced. He said, can I give you a high five? It's not what we read. The younger son was angry, and he refused to go in. And the dad pleads with him. He says, come on, please. This is important to me. And the older son goes, well, this younger son of yours, do you notice the pronoun? He's squandered his wealth. He's carried on with prostitutes. He lived recklessly and carelessly. Why is he getting a greeting like this? And the older son is filled with bitterness and jealousy. It's like, I've worked my tail off, and look at how you're treating this younger son who's returned. Do you think the older son got a raw deal? Now, we're not supposed to ask that, are we? But I know a lot of people who would say, it doesn't seem fair on the surface. That's one of the challenges, isn't it, with grace? There's something about grace that doesn't seem deserved, nor does it seem fair. So this older son is going, it's not fair. What about me? What about me? Can I give you a Christmas recipe? You're going, John, I never knew you cooked. This is a recipe for bitterness. If you want to experience bitterness this week, here's what's involved. Compare, and another dose of comparison. I guarantee you, you start comparing yourself to others, what they have, how you feel they have been blessed, you're bound to end up very bitter. Another fascinating thing I find in the story is the dad does not rebuke the son. It's almost as if the dad is saying, I get where you're coming from. I appreciate your disappointment. But he reasons with him. It's like, you need to rejoice because this is your brother who has returned. And then he reminds the older son of the blessings that this older son has. All I have is yours. Not only my possessions, but my passions and my priorities and my concerns. Hey, here's a positive part of my recipe. This week, when you're feeling that bitterness, and I don't care who you are, you can always experience some jealousy and envy. Count your blessings. Stop and go, wait a second. I'm actually really blessed. Did you know that as we speak today under this banner, Guess Who's Coming to Christmas Dinner? I try to, on a regular basis, read world news. There are millions of people starving as I speak right now. Millions who are wondering where they're getting their next meal from. This younger son who wished that he could eat like the pigs, well, I got to tell you, that is relevant, and that applies to what we see here in Luke chapter 15. What about me? The rest of the story, I could not tell you what the rest of the story is. I kind of hope that the younger son's situation was experienced by the older son, that he came to that point of realization of what his father was saying. But let me just close with a couple of applications. The first application is this. This week, Christmas 2025, there's a high potential that in some families there will be jealousy and a sense of not fair. There's going to be somebody who has their calculator out going, okay, she gave you this gift, but boy, the gift I got from her was not comparable. There's going to be people who are going to look at the experience of relatives or others going, God, why have you blessed them so much? And look at our situation and look at our circumstance. Yes, the older brother, I think if we pressed, was dealing with some self-righteousness. It's not that Jesus is commending an irreligious lifestyle. In fact, he's wanting people to change, to repent. But Jesus doesn't promote a religious lifestyle either. Because the older son, like the Pharisees and the scribes, were so close to the master, but yet so far away. What a twist, what an irony. For the someone you would expect would not have been at the feast was there. Someone you thought might have been at the feast did not show up. So we need to look at this not only as a challenge not to be self-righteous, to take God's gift of grace and to identify with the younger son, because all of us have sinned and come short of God's glory. Jesus came to die for you. He came to die for me. And that's the true story of Christmas. In our vestibule, when you leave today, you're going to see a sign. Look for it. It's on a little box, and all it reads is, lost and found. I actually thought that might be a good banner to have in the vestibule or the foyer. As people come in, people who might be lost and going in the wrong direction, this is a place where you can be found and experience the forgiveness of God. But what a motivation for us to go out and invite others to our Lord Jesus Christ. A lost and found mission. Maybe someone you can invite to come along on Wednesday night. Maybe it's someone that you can invite to come to church services in the new year. Did you know that as Christians, as Christ followers, we are in the search and rescue business? That's what we are called to do for the sake of our Father. When that little girl got found, I can remember the experience because I looked into her eyes and I could see a girl who is distraught. There's nothing like seeing someone who is lost and knows it. And that describes hundreds and thousands of people, even here in London. And then all you need to do is take a look into the Father's eyes. When I looked into the eyes of the parents, you could see such love and passion. And that's what we're called to engage in as we are involved in the ultimate lost and found mission. I'm going to ask Rick and the team to come back, and we're going to close with our theme song this month. Will you stand with us, please?